Welcome to Small Biz Life, episode 98. What to do when your plan fails.
Ugh. Does this sound familiar?
Oh my God, I have so much to do today.
Don't forget to breathe.
But I have almost 400 emails in my inbox and 30 phone calls to make.
Have you looked into getting a virtual assistant yet?
Oh, and I need to schedule all my social media posts.
Did you drink anything today?
I had coffee.
Did you eat today?
Did I mention coffee's a bean?
This is Small Biz Life.
Hey guys, welcome to another exciting episode of Small Biz Life. We're going to talk about failure.
Yeah.
Woohoo!
Oh, yeah, I know. And everyone's like, hey, you guys are a little too inspirational. Could you bring it down a little bit? Just turn it down a little bit.
No, and we're going to, we really want to talk about like how to deal with when a plan fails and how to course correct so that you can turn it into a success. So this is actually going to be a less depressing episode than it sounds like.
Yeah.
But before we start, my name is Kristin Ingram.
And I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And we are a husband and wife team, small business owners. We own a company called Ingram Digital Media, Inc., which provides educational resources to all sorts of different people, accounting students, fantasy world builders, and small business owners. And it's funny because like there's a lot of crossover between the three, and we're really big fans of education. We've worked with small businesses. We've got combined 30 years of experience working in business, and all of my experience is working with small business. So, I think that we bring some great experience to the table. And, if you're a first-time listener, we want to thank you so much for being here with us. And we hope that by the end of this episode, you will hit that subscribe button and you will continue to join us. The cool thing about our show is like, you don't have to start at episode 0 and work your way through. Pick the episodes that resonate with you. So look through the list, and see what works for you.
Yeah, because that's really the truth is, we reach these topics a lot of times at this point when we hear things online with people struggling, or it's something offline that we've bumped into, so we're sharing the stuff that we know people need. But for everyone, it's different. So, you might be doing better in one area where the episodes will be fun and entertaining and worth listening to, even if you're not struggling there. Look for the ones you struggle in first, because it's easier to get improvement where you're weak.
Yeah, exactly. So, feel free to kind of bounce around. These aren't in any particular order. And hey, if you're, a returning listener, we want to thank you so much for being with us again this week. And tell somebody about us.
Yeah.
If you've got friends that aren't listening to podcasts yet, and I know a lot of you are like rabid podcast fans, show people how to listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
Because they're an amazing source of information, that's available and on demand and free.
Yeah. Just go ahead and show them on their phone or on their computer how to subscribe to our show, and then show them how they can find other great shows that are out there.
Exactly. But it's very important that you have them subscribe to our show. That's very important. So let's talk about this topic that people don't really like to talk about. Because I think that a lot of business owners don't like to talk about failure. They don't want to admit failure. And they see failure as like a point at which you stop.
Wrong.
Correct. Right. You don't stop at that point. Okay. That is where you course correct.
And I think it's even worse for the at-home businesses where you're not relying on your business for income. You're trying to get there, but you're moving so slow as to reduce the risk. And there are certain things you never want to risk. You don't want to risk your household or your family's budget, of course. But if you're not taking risks in business, the rate of growth you're going to achieve will be exceptionally slow. And I think this also helps lead to a lot of the behavior where people who are watching you do it maybe don't think you have a real business because you're not really putting yourself out there the way you should be.
Mm-hmm. And, if you think about like some of the kind of the big names that, you've probably heard of before, Dave Ramsey went bankrupt because of his business. Brendon Burchard went bankrupt because of his business. It is not uncommon for really successful people to have gotten tripped up somewhere along the way.
Yeah.
If there's somebody major that you listen to or that you follow that hasn't talked about this, there's probably a failure, somewhere in their track record.
Definitely failures. Even it's like one of the people who gets looked at the most in the technology world, even today, post his death, is Steve Jobs, who credited his ultimate success to being fired from Apple.
Mm-hmm.
So failure is not a bad thing. Failure is really, it's the most effective way we learn, unfortunately.
So,
which is why I learned so much.
So I think that, the first thing that you need to accept is that you will have at least one failure in your career.
Yeah.
And if you don't, it means that you're playing it way too safe.
And you're probably never going to get to where you want to be and have the kind of respect that you deserve for the knowledge and the products that you offer, because you're probably not offering them the way you should.
Right. And the thing is, it doesn't have to be like a catastrophic, I lost everything and went bankrupt failure. Maybe it's, you launched a product and it didn't sell. That's a failure. It's not catastrophic. You can recover from it. Maybe it's you failed to deliver on a product or service. We've all had times in our careers where we've had things like that happen.
Yeah.
The first product that we tried to launch after we launched Small Biz Life was a total failure. And I think the other thing that's really important to understand is that if you have a failure, most likely the only person that's going to know
is you.
And that was a huge block for me. Because when we had, when we offered our first course and it didn't sell, and I was like, oh my God, like all of our listeners are going to know and everybody's going to know. And now because I'm telling you. But, and they're going to think that we're this huge failure. And it's funny because like I did some coaching and she said, really, unless you tell them, the only person that's going to know is you. And
I have a tendency to think too, and I've heard this from other people. I know Brendon Burchard says this and some other very large people. Failure makes you seem authentic.
Yeah.
The problem is when you're trying to offer people that you understand where they're at and you want them to move further ahead, maybe to where you are, or maybe even beyond, it doesn't seem realistic if they don't believe that you can identify with where they're at. If you've never struggled and you're trying to help people who are struggling, it's probably not a good avatar, because they're going to sit there and go, well, this person sounds really smart, but they don't understand my problems. They don't get the exact nuances because I've had to struggle so much. And if they think your life is a rose garden, then unless they realize that it's layered in manure at the bottom, they're just going to see their pretty flowers and go, they don't understand.
Well, and it's interesting because, in one of the groups that I'm in, somebody had posted that, they were trying to put together this funnel and they were struggling because they had never struggled with anything. Everything always came easy to them. And so they didn't know how to tell that story of overcoming and learning. And like everybody was kind of like, really? Like you've never struggled with anything in your whole life?
Besides this one thing that you're talking to us about right now.
Right.
Yeah.
This is, and, this person was having trouble selling their course because people couldn't relate to that. Most people struggle with something in their lives.
Yeah.
And that's what, people connected with Dave Ramsey because he went bankrupt and paid off a whole bunch of debt, and people that message resonated with people. So, understand that it's not just you. And the problem is like, if you just kind of sit there and wait until you think that you've mitigated all of the risks and it's absolutely perfect, you're not launching.
Yeah, if there's no risk, there's no reward, and that's just the way life works. Is you take the risk because there's a potential reward that is greater than the risk, and so up front, the most important thing is to understand what are the realistic risks to the endeavor you're taking, because there are certain things I would not do, like I would not put my mortgage on the line to grow my business, because I don't lose my house and my business. Because the business might fail. I don't want to lose the house just because it failed.
Right, exactly. And it's like, that's why, we don't recommend that people, just jump out of a full-time job into a business that's not making any money yet, unless there is a plan. If you've got a 6-month emergency fund, you say, listen, I've got a plan and I'm going to go at this for 6 months and I've got this money to pay our bills in case I don't make any money. Cool. Or we can live off what my spouse makes. I'm going to take some, X amount of time to try to make this work.
Yeah.
But, I've seen people like, hey, I've got $30 in the bank and I'm going to leap out of my full-time job into the abyss. And you're like, okay, all right, that's too much risk for me.
Yeah.
You kind of have to set what your own risk tolerance is. It's kind of like investing, right? And once you do that, you can find kind of where that safe place is for you.
Yeah.
But if that safe place is zero risk, then your business is not going to make it.
Yeah, there's not going to be much reward on that backside of no risk. And the risk doesn't have to be financial. It could just be like embarrassment, right? I mean, because if you crash and burn going out into the world of the internet, the trolls will be waiting for you on the other side. So that is a risk that some people may or may not be able to tolerate. So the biggest thing is, once you understand the risk, you can go in with your eyes wide open, because you have to understand the things you're looking for, because you're trying to fix the problems so you don't have the failure, because no one wants to fail. But as you do and you go wide with your eyes wide open, if you do fail, and maybe not the whole business, maybe it's like with a product launch, maybe it's with smaller things mixed in there, it gives you the chance to learn.
Yes, absolutely. So, okay. So once you kind of, you're launching stuff, okay, and you've realized that there is a chance that there's going to be failure. When a product fails or when a plan fails, you have to own it. Don't blame the weather. Don't blame Facebook. Don't blame your followers. Because the problem is, if you don't own it, you're never going to be able to figure out why it failed.
Yeah.
If you blame everyone outside of you, then there's no real reason to figure out why it failed, because it was everybody else's fault.
And sometimes, too, it's just good customer service. And I don't know if it's still true, but years ago when I worked for UPS, they only counted it as a weather late package if it was at the destination it was being delivered to. So if there's weather in the middle part of the country, very rarely would they say that was a weather problem if it was delivered late. It's only when it was at the person's house, that part of it, because part of it too is you're making it right to the customer, even when it hurts sometimes. It might not be directly your fault, but you're the person they're dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, when you own when something goes wrong, your ability to pivot and change and, correct and be successful later is going to be much higher. Because if it's not your fault, then it's out of your control. There's nothing that you can fix that's going to make it better.
No.
And I know that that's really hard, because we never want to say it was our fault. And, there are some times that, a plan fails because, we've had issues where my computers crash the day before tax season ends. We've had issues where internet went out on tax day.
There have been issues.
We've had issues, but the thing is, we go, okay, listen, with the computer, we were able to get it back up and running real quick. With the internet, I went somewhere else. I went somewhere with internet and we finished out the day. So, but we owned it, and we course corrected. So that's really important.
And the problem is too, when you don't own it, you get bitter and upset at where the fault, and the fault might legitimately be somewhere else, but then you obsess over that, and you're more frustrated with maybe a vendor or some other piece that failed you, and you're not taking care of the customers who did not get what they were expecting from you.
Right, exactly. Okay, so the next thing that you need to do is you need to understand the damage and list out what went wrong.
This is so important because you know what? So often when people have, and this is the perfectionist, I'm talking to you right now. If you're a perfectionist, this is to you. If the audio doesn't work and you like do a Facebook Live, it's not the end of the world. And heck, most people who watch Facebook Lives usually tell you that's how you know the audio isn't working. And you go, thank you. You log off and you go, oh, come on. And you try again because it's not the end of the world. It happens.
Yeah. And I've told this story before. And, if you've heard the story on the podcast, I'm sorry. But we were doing our last big push for Small Biz HQ, which is our monthly membership site. When we launched it, we're doing our last big push. And we were doing a live webinar. Mm-hmm. And so we had all these people signed up, and YouTube crashed that night. Mm-hmm. And we're sitting there going, crap, what do we do? We have all these people. So luckily the webinar we were using, the chat was still working.
Yeah.
So I run and grab my phone, and we're like, okay, go to, facebook.com/group/smallbizlife, mm-hmm. which is our Facebook group. And we're going to do a Facebook Live for mm-hmm. the rest of the webinar, which means I didn't have my pretty slides. We're kind of like shuffling around to, reposition ourselves while Jeff is accepting people into our closed Facebook group.
And trying to make sure everyone who could see the chat inside of the webinar software knew to go there.
Mm-hmm. And so, but you know what? It's funny because about 90% of the people came over to the Facebook mm-hmm. Live, and we had our best sales night mm-hmm. that night.
Yeah.
Because
with a failure,
right? With a huge failure, for about 3 minutes, we freaked out. We both absolutely freaked out and went, "Oh my God, how are we ever going to recover from mm-hmm. this?" But the thing is, people bought because they saw that we acted quickly and mm-hmm. we were able to come up with another solution.
Which is why it's so important. All of these things we're telling you is, especially in the modern world where information and even just things move so quickly. As a small business owner, your biggest strength is your ability to be agile and to make those kind of decisions and go, it's not going to be perfect, but I can shift here quickly if I don't panic.
Yeah, I think somebody said something similar to this, I think, at the HQ group the other day. They said, perfection is the enemy of done, mm-hmm. right? And if you're going for perfection, you will never be done. Mm-hmm. And so I like done. Mm-hmm. That's where I'm trying to get to.
And there's nothing wrong with trying to get as close as you can to perfection. But sometimes, you have to iterate there. You have to take a few steps. You have book editions, even though hundreds of man hours get put into making books, they'll still come out with a second edition because there's a few things they didn't catch in the first edition.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's one of the cool things, especially if you're selling digital products.
You don't have to wait. Yeah.
Right. If there's an error, you make the correction and you re-upload.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the awesome things. I was actually talking to somebody last night, and, one of the things that's slowing her down is her editor getting, stuff back to her. And I said, well, how many errors are there? And she's like, just a couple. But, sometimes it's something wrong with the answer key or whatever. And I said, why don't you just post it and then put up mm-hmm. the new version when you get the back? Oh, yeah, I could do that. Mm-hmm. Because nobody expects things to be perfect.
No.
It's only us.
Yes, right.
We're the only people that expect perfection from anything.
And then you have some people, especially from the marketing side, that argue that perfection actually hurts sales. Mm-hmm. They can lower conversions because, you've made it perfect technically, but it's no longer compelling.
Mm-hmm. Either that or, it's funny because they actually argue for putting errors into your emails because then people will write back.
It helps boost up the reputation of your server because people are responding to you.
Yeah. So, it's kind of, it's an interesting argument. But so if you, even when we have a successful launch, we always like to do a debrief,
A post-mortem.
Post-mortem. And figure out like what went well and what went wrong and what we could do better next time.
Yeah, because especially in a bigger launch, nothing went right. And you're going to judge it at one point in time and say if it was a success or not. But there were wins and losses all throughout a launch. I mean, even if it's a soft launch, there are wins and losses within there. And you kind of look at the back end number and go, well, did I convert enough? And then I'm going to judge success on that, which is maybe the right place to judge success. But you have to look at everything along the lines that got you to that point to say, what did I do well? What did I not do well?
Right. And we even do this like after webinars, after longer Facebook Lives. The short ones, we don't really do it. We do this after speaking engagements. Sometimes we do this after podcast episodes. Like we'll kind of go, all right, so what did you think that was a good one? Did you think, do we have enough energy? Like it's just a really good practice to get into, to just kind of assess, and I think the bigger the project, the longer you should take with this. Usually for like a 1 hour podcast, it's about the time that Jeff and I spend from, saving the file to getting downstairs. That's about how long we take to debrief.
Yeah.
For a longer launch, or like a bigger dollar, higher revenue item, we'll sit down probably maybe for like an hour, and kind of say, all right, what worked and what didn't. It just kind of all depends, but it's a good thing to always check in, whether it was successful or not, and just say, okay, what worked here, right? What do we need to make sure we replicate? And what are some things we could improve on for next time?
Yeah. Agree 100%.
Okay, awesome. That's your job.
Yes, dear.
Yes, sir. That's how we work in this house. It works wonderfully for me. So determine what can be salvaged. Because that's the thing. I think that no matter what you do, something can be salvaged from it. Yeah. And I think, when we had that failure with our first product, I think part of it was the way that we sold it, but part of it was the content. And so what we kind of did is we took some of the aspects from it and we said, you know what, we're going to use this later for Small Biz HQ.
And it's one thing I'll tell my world builders when they're storytelling, it's like, if you have a story idea, write it out. And you might not like it, but don't get rid of it. Chuck it in a drawer, because there could be a character, there could be a scene or something that either turns out to be gold later, or maybe when you revisit it later, it's now the appropriate time, and now it makes sense to you, and you can see the path to the bigger story. So, when you do the work, it's never all good or all bad. It's not a binary, unless it's like you answer yes or no on a test. It's not a binary, all good, all bad. There's always some good material, and like that, a lot of that material we repackaged and said, okay, let's do it this way, but we'll change what we call it. We'll distribute things differently, just as a way to get some really good content out there that we couldn't the other way. And if we just threw all of the content away, then we would have had nothing.
Right. And, one of the things that I think we realized with that one, people listen to this show because they like the discussion between the two of us. And so that was one thing when we launched our monthly membership site. We said, we're going to try to record, 95% of the stuff together.
More about more banter within the education.
Right. So you kind of get, you get both of our perspectives. You get Jeff's IT and industrial engineering, background. You get, my numbers background. And it makes the content much more interesting when you have that back and forth.
Yeah.
So, but there's always something that can be salvaged. Even sometimes, if you do a speech and the speech doesn't go really well, there's usually like a nugget, there's a story, there's a line, there's something
It could have just been the delivery.
Right. That really worked with your audience, right? There could be, there's always something that you get a laugh line, you get something. Those are the kind of things you go, you know what, this is going to, this stays.
There have definitely been times where I've done stuff where I thought was horrible. And then people tell me it's great. And I go back and I look at it and I'm like, what I said was dumb. It wasn't good. But I delivered it well. So I could at least take that away from it, right? Or sometimes it's like the content's good, but my delivery was off. That happens too. And especially if you do stuff live, if you do stuff frequently, it's not going to always, your next blog post, your next podcast, your next YouTube video will not always be better than the last one.
Mm-hmm. And I think one thing that's really important, one of the reasons that sometimes things fail is that when we're doing our podcast, when we're doing our blog posts, when we're doing our lives, we're being authentically us, right? And then when you get into the sales process, you think that you have to be this, straight-laced other person. And it can
turn into the grandmother. That'd be awesome.
No, you can't do the grandmother.
Spike copper pots.
No, we're not selling copper pots. No. So Jeff is obsessed with the grandmother lady who sells the copper pots. I don't know why, he just is. But now I completely lost where I am because of the copper pots. Oh, but what that does though is that it completely confuses your audience because they're like, wait, I thought you were this person. And now you're trying to sell me something as this person. So which one are you?
That's why, of all of the people who I watch online, Brendan Burchard is always my favorite because he seems the same in all of his content.
Yeah, and it's funny because it doesn't matter whether you're reading it, you're listening to it, you're watching him, you see him live. He's always the same guy.
And the cool thing is, it's you can tell content-wise, okay, he's telling me all of the benefits now. So he's in a sales pitch now. But it's not from delivery. It's from because we know enough about what he's saying to go, oh, he's now going through sales copy.
Yeah. But no, that was kind of the cool thing with him is when I went to go see him live the first time, he was still that guy. He was the guy from all the webinars I had seen, and all the, the live webinars, the recorded stuff, the YouTube videos, he is that guy. And I think he's a little bit more open in his live events. But it's cool because he's going to start doing that online. Which I think is way overdue for him. And I'm so glad that he's getting into that. But, be who you really are. Because if you're trying to be something you're not, eventually you're going to mess up.
Yeah.
And either, one day you're going to go live and you're not going to have your hair and your makeup done, or, you're going to get, somebody's going to take a photo of you somewhere. Something is going to fall apart and you're going to forget the facade. So don't create one.
Yeah, there's a great story, and I forget there's this group called breatharians, and the idea is they can, according to them, not eat. They get their sustenance supposedly through energy or breathing. I don't understand it enough. You want to go look it up if you want better information. But one of the leaders of the of the movement, not really an organization, was a picture taken of him coming out of, I believe, a fried chicken place with a bucket of fried chicken. Or maybe he was eating at the restaurant or whatever. But there was a picture taken of him doing that. And then him and people came out saying, well, he was just doing it socially. He was trying to make people feel better because they need to eat. But, whether or not you believe in that, which I don't, I think it's bogus. I'll just be completely honest. He, when he ate that chicken,
he did damage to the movement.
He did damage to the movement, whether or not it's true.
Right. And I mean, that's kind of the thing. It's for us, when we originally started thinking about doing this, I sat there and I'm like, all right, well, I should probably get some suits and stuff and start doing my hair and wear some makeup. And And I finally say, you know what? That's just not me.
No.
Like that's, I grew the CPA firm, like being the CPA in jeans, and so.
Right now she's wearing her NCL Classic Bingo shirt.
I am. I'm wearing my Norwegian Cruise Line Bingo t-shirt and a pair of jeans. Because it's who I am, I mean, that's who I am. And if that doesn't resonate with you, there are people that you can find online who are not me.
Yeah.
And I'm totally cool with that, because I think as a lot of small business owners, we're casual people, we're getting dirty, we're in the trenches and that's how it is. So I decided I'm going to be me.
Yeah.
And Jeff is him, with his crazy t-shirts. And, but it's funny because like we've built a brand around this because this is what, small business looks like. And most of my clients, it's funny, the reason I kind of adopted this was because, if I went to go see most of my clients in a suit, they would kind of freak out. They're like, is the IRS coming? Like, did somebody die? Like, what's going on?
How much do you cost?
Because like a lot of my clients, like when I go see them, they're wearing jeans, they're wearing t-shirts and, because that's the nature of their business. So they feel much more comfortable if I come to the table in jeans and a nice shirt than if I come in, in a suit.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's what you want is you want your clients to be comfortable.
Yeah.
So.
And then once you've looked at what you can salvage from it, be smart. Look at the landscape around you and say, from the wins in there, is there a quick win I can get from this? So there's this one thing I can salvage. Is there something I can do quickly with that to help make up for the failure? Is sort of like if the Facebook Live doesn't work and people are expecting you, don't go home and just say, well, maybe tomorrow at this time. Sit there and have the courage to turn it back on and go live again. Because sometimes, like Kristin was saying with our first January call for HQ, which was the live one that we were trying to actually do sales through, that actually helped bring people in because we worked through the mistake. We didn't just give up and go, well, we'll try again tomorrow. Because some of those people, we would have had a lot less of them probably show up.
Right, exactly. And sometimes it's, maybe you develop a bigger course and that doesn't resonate with people. So you take a lot of that content and you repackage it into smaller courses and, you try to sell it as individual modules instead of the big, $1,000, $2,000
I think
course.
too, if the first course you're going to launch, is a $1,000 to $2,000 thing, you're probably going to have trouble selling it. And if that's your only product, what are you making money off of?
Right. So I think, we're seeing in the industry, we're seeing a lot more people doing membership sites, a lot more people doing, smaller courses. So maybe they would have had 30 modules in $1,000 course.
That's maybe 30 courses.
Right. And instead they're breaking that down into like 30 different courses at lower price points.
So there's a hint for any of you that have failed at launching a large course. Maybe you have 30 courses.
Or maybe you have 10 courses, that you take, take things that are related, bundle those together and sell that for $97, the other thing that we're seeing is for the really big courses, is we're seeing people that are breaking that down into payments that are going for, 6 months.
Well, it's this idea, I think they like to call it micro continuity, where it's like a subscription site, but the people who invest into it, there's an end in sight.
Right, exactly. So, so sometimes you kind of have to think about like, what can we restructure? And maybe that's the thing. If you have a big course and it doesn't sell, maybe put a payment plan on it.
Yeah.
And say, hey, we're now offering, we understand this is a lot of money. Now we're offering a payment plan and see if that works, or, if that doesn't work, say, hey, look, we've taken the modules and we've broken them down to make them more affordable for you. So you can just buy the modules you want.
You don't have to tell the people you're selling it to, just like, hey, I now have a course on this more, a smaller scope course.
Right. But I mean, that's the thing is like, and the thing that's cool is that when you sell it that way, that, hey, we understand that this is a lot of money, so we're offering this option. It doesn't sound like failure to your audience. It sounds like you're giving them what they need, right? So that they can purchase your course. And so that's the thing is, you're not coming out and saying, well, since none of you bought this at the, the high price point,
I'm going to lower the price now.
We've decided to offer payment plan instead. You sell it as you're giving them what they need.
Yeah. I've got from interacting with people in my audience that there's people who really need this and it's just too expensive. So what we've done is we've come up with this thing to help people like them out and say, hey, 6 payments of this much, you get the same thing.
Exactly. And for some of you as business owners, that might actually help you out because now you've got revenue coming in for the next 6 months, versus this large chunk of cash coming in.
You have to then manage the cash for 6 months.
Right, exactly. So, I like that, Jeff's idea of like trying to turn it into a quick win, right? As Jeff always says, you're agile, you can pivot. Pivot quickly, reframe the offer, and send it back out. And don't, I think we're both very much against like dropping the price down, unless
that should not be your first move.
Right. That should not be your first move. Try a payment plan, try breaking it up into smaller pieces. That's kind of the first way that you should go. And you might determine like, okay, we're going to drop the price. But do it for like a limited number of people. So, hey, the next 20 people who buy get it for this lower price. I'm also a really big fan of adding more value to increase the value of the offer.
Yeah.
So what additional products can you offer? What additional, webinars can you offer to kind of increase the value of that product? And then, while you're trying to get those quick wins, make a new plan to move forward. So like long term, what's going to change?
Yeah, because it's not part of your business plan anymore.
So, that could be like, hey, we're not going to do big courses anymore. Or, if I'm going to do big courses, there's always going to be a payment plan. Or, maybe there's a live component that you didn't plan on offering before. That's the one thing I notice is that typically with a course that's around $1,000, there's a live component, right? Whether it's an event that you get to go to or live webinars that you have for a certain amount of time, there's always some sort of live component that goes with it. So just, think about how is your strategy going to change moving forward? Maybe it's your sales strategy. I'm going to run more Facebook ads next time to get more people into the funnel. Maybe because, one mistake that I see from a lot of people in the online community is that they're going from like, hey, here's my opt-in that's like, that's a free PDF. And then I'm going to pitch you a $500 product.
Good luck.
Yeah, that's too much of it's not enough value to get them to buy a $500 product.
You have to prove the $500 worth of value before they're going to consider spending $500 on you.
Yeah, exactly. So, you've got to kind of think like, how can I, we talked about this in HQ I think it was in April, where, we talked about like, how do you build a ladder to get your clients from that free option to like $1,000 product. And it's a process. You got to offer them something that's like, less than $29 and then maybe $197. And then you can get them up to $1,000. But you can't just jump from free to 1,000 unless it's like, Brendan Burchard does this really successfully by doing multiple days of multiple hour live teachings. And then saying, hey, here's my $1,000 thing, and you'll get all these recordings.
Yeah.
Which at that point, you kind of felt like, well, I feel like I should give him $1,000 because I just spent 12 hours with him over the last 3 days, and it was really good content. So, those are the kind of things that you need to look at is the intro value enough to get people to pull the trigger on the product? I think like the most important thing, and this can be really hard, is just breathe, smile, and give yourself some grace.
Yeah. This is going back to own it. It's like, it is what it is. You could be frustrated and mad and bitter and full of pain. It won't change where you're at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So if you can smile and give yourself some of that grace, as Kristin likes to call it, and actually a lot of people like to call it grace too, but if you can do that, you then have a little bit more energy, and your mind's a little bit more open to look to see, okay, what are those next wins? You lose that in bitterness. You lose the ability to see clearly. Your glasses, they steam up, and you don't want the steam on the glasses.
Exactly. And don't let that kill your momentum, right? I know, after you do a big launch, and you're not seeing those sales come in, it's really hard to keep going. But, if you kind of take a little bit of time, it was funny because we were on Brandon Burchard did a Facebook Live yesterday when he was recording some videos for his YouTube channel. And he said, you've got to celebrate wins.
Mm-hmm.
That's what builds your momentum. And even if you have a plan that fails, there are some things that went right.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you got really good at recording your content, or you got really good at doing Facebook Lives. You got more engagement than you've ever had before. Maybe you did a webinar and you've never done a webinar and 20 people showed up.
You wanted 1,000, but you got 20. You know what? You got freaking 20 your first time.
Right, exactly. So, there's always some wins, and you have to make sure that you celebrate those and you remember those in this process. And that's the thing is it's funny, when Jeff and I first launched HQ, I will never forget, the first sale that we got, we went bananas.
Mm-hmm.
The first time we sold something on Accounting in Focus, it was a $9 product. It was $8.99. And we sold a copy of this PDF, and I went ballistic, and it was $9.
And yeah.
But it was the greatest $9 ever,
It's like you get the appreciation for when you go to those old mom and pop restaurants that have the dollar bill framed up on the wall. It makes sense to you when you sell your first product in a product line, when you sell that first service. That has that meaning, and you should give it that meaning because that is so powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just so important. And then, make sure that, you learn from it.
This is the secret number one.
Because the thing is, what do they say? Those that don't study history are doomed to repeat it. If you don't study, your failures and what happened and learn from it, you are doomed to, repeat those same mistakes again. Yeah. And so super important.
Because unfortunately, the truth is failing in business is learning what your avatar really wants. They're your audience. They are there. If they're not responding, you need to learn that lesson.
Right. And it's, sometimes that lesson is really as simple as, did I listen to what they wanted, not what they said they wanted?
Yeah. Because they might have even meant it when they said it, but people are often wrong with what they want.
Yep. So, I hope that this helps you, especially if you've had a fail recently or something didn't go as well as you wanted it to. I hope this kind of helps you, get back on the horse and start riding again. Because, you have a purpose out there. You have skills. You have things that people need. And once you figure out, exactly how to put all that together and package it, you're going to be successful. But you can't stop trying. So, if you've got any questions about this, if you've had a fail recently, and you kind of want some help kind of debriefing it, the best place to do that is to join our Facebook group, which is facebook.com/group/smallbizlife, and come join the conversation with us.
Yeah. This was Small Biz Life.